Welcome to the Mayoral podcast, where we sit down with mayors from across the nation to break down how local government really works and explore the many ways young people can shape their communities. I'm your host, Aayan Hanif, and today I'm excited to be joined by Mayor Ramos of the city of Mountain View. Mayor Ramos, thank you so much for being here. I'd love if you could just introduce yourself for anyone tuning in who may not know you.
Thank you, Aayan. My name is Aayan Ramos, and I'm the mayor of the best city. If you interview anyone else and they tell you that, it's a lie. But I am the mayor for the city of Mountain View. We are located in between San Jose and San Francisco. We are known to be on the peninsula and in Santa Clara County. We are known for being in the middle of Silicon Valley. We have we're a major economic hub for our country. We have headquarters for really high known tech companies, including LinkedIn and most famously Google. We also have the headquarters for Intuit, they're a tech software. And then I believe Microsoft also has their campus here too. I believe we also, there was an announcement in the news that OpenAI will also have some offices here too. So we are probably more well known on like a national and international level for being part of the Silicon Valley infrastructure. But we are a very diverse community. We were initially part of what is called the Valley of Heart's Delight, where it used to be an agricultural center. We were a stagecoach stop, and that is the origin of our city. We became incorporated in 1902 and slowly built our way to be more urban, and made our own, how do I say this, our own destiny as a city.
That's amazing. Mountain View is definitely amazing. It's actually where my parents first immigrated when they came to America. And so
Oh,
it's
that's
really a
great.
start of a journey for my own family as well. But I wanted to start off just by asking a couple of questions about like what the mayor actually does, because I think that's the thing a lot of people don't actually understand. So could you just start by like walking us through what like a day to day is as the mayor? What tasks and decisions do you make?
Okay, so the mayor's duties may differ from city to city. So in the city of Mountain View, the mayor is technically just like all the members of city council. We are one vote. On a day-to-day level, it could vary based on whether there's an event, whether there's a council meeting, um, and like whether like some of the events are just really fun, like a ribbon cutting for a new business, or I had my state of the city back in May, where we went over like all the things that we're planning for the future of Mountain View. On days of council meetings, we have our meetings twice a month, usually on Tuesdays. And as the mayor, I lead the meeting, so I'm in charge of making sure that we go through the agenda, that everything kind of runs smoothly. I call on the people to talk. We run under something called Rosenberg's Rule of Order. It's a very similar thing as Robert's Rules of Order. It's a really kind of very, I forgot what the word is, but it's like really, you when you know, and it's like so minutia of information that people who are in meetings, that's the kind of things that they know. But there's a certain structure to council meetings that the mayor is required to chair through. As the mayor, you are the voice for the city. You represent how what the council and the city believes, and the statement that comes from it, and that also applies when things go wrong. So, for example, earlier this year we had a state of emergency because there was a water main incident, um, and a vendor mishandled a water pipe, which contaminated a bunch of people's water, around 67 households. And so we had to get access to water for all those people. Um, and until we were properly able to clear out that pipe of any impurities and get the state's clearance on it. And that was like 2 weeks of a lot of stress. Um, There were things like we we had things like our State of the City, which was a nice big event that talked about what we planned for the city. We had recently our annual Pride event. It was the second one we had. We had been raising the Pride flag for over a decade now. But last year we decided to do like a whole kind of Mountain View's own Pride event. So our theme is always Together in Pride. It's a very big ethos in our city that we do things together as a community. When we were faced with the pandemic, we had like our tagline was Together MV. We're in this all to kind of together. But overall, I mentioned that before it started recording, that I went to conferences that were just for mayors, and that was also kind of a fascinating thing. And so you got to meet other mayors and see the problems they have. Some problems are the same no matter what city, what state you are. Everyone's grappling with the housing crisis. Everyone's grappling with homelessness. Everyone's grappling with uncertain economic conditions. And so those are the kinds of things that in the day-to-day life as mayor, it's never really a dull moment.
Well, it obviously sounds like you have a lot on your plate, but I wanted to touch on something that you said in the beginning. You mentioned that you have the same vote as every other council member. And upon doing some of my own research, I know that Mountain View is a council manager system, which
Hmm.
is a little different than a lot of other cities, which may have stronghold systems. So I was just wondering if you could explain that for the people and explain like what the major difference is between these two systems.
Yeah, so our city manager handles the day-to-day. They are paid full-time to handle all the things. So they have they have departments under them, and then they have the head of their departments that answer to them. The city man in the city of Mountain View, we have three people that directly answer to the city council, and that is the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk. And that is who the city council directly hires, and they handle all the things. Some obviously has a little bit more duties than others. So our city manager probably has like the large chunk. They have the largest amount of workers directly under them. But you also have the city attorney. It's important to have the city manager and the city attorney kind of like separate chain of commands so that accountability is there. And then you also have the city clerk who handles a lot of the outfacing stuff, anything that the council has decided, their meetings, their minutes, their agendas. The city clerk is the one that sends that stuff out, sends out, handles like when there's a public comment, when there are comments about things to the council, they handle a lot of that. Um, so when it comparatively to a mayor of a different city, I can't think necessarily of probably like LA or San Francisco. Well, San Francisco is really weird because they're a city and a county, so like let's not do San Francisco. Let's do LA. Their mayor is one directly elected. Mountain View were not directly elected as mayor. In Mountain View, we rotate among our council colleagues. So in Mountain View, we kind of have a system in place where everyone gets a turn usually if they want one, and they first go by seniority. And well, first they go with, "Have you been mayor?" They're like, "No." Then you're still in the bucket. And then they're like, "What is your seniority?" And then they rank from there. Like, how long have you been on council? So if you've been on council for like 7 years and you were never mayor somehow, you're on the top of the list. Now, if you have people, obviously, we are at large, our city council, still. We'll see how long that lasts. But every 2 years, we have an election, whether there's for 4 seats or for 3 seats. And we have term limits in our city. You are allowed to do 2 consecutive terms. So 2 4-year terms. You can hop off of council, wait 2 years, and then run again, which has been done in our city. But you have 2 consecutive year term limits. So like you can be on council and you could have been elected with other people at the same time, and then you have the same amount of seniority. What we do is that it's based on how well you did in the race. So if you were top vote getter, or second place, or third place, that is the order that we're going to go down for your opportunity for mayor.
That's amazing. I just think it's pretty interesting you brought up that there's a city manager. I think that's something that a lot of people don't actually know. And I was just wondering if you could explain, like, what are some tasks that maybe the mayor does that the city manager has like no control of, and like vice versa? Like, are there certain things that the city manager does that the mayor has no control of?
Oh, so like the city manager, I feel like has it's weird. The city manager has more access to doing the things, but the city manager answers to the city council. So like this, I as a council member or a mayor, I can talk to the city manager about something I want to get done. Um, they probably have to figure out weigh in of like whether that's the will of the whole council, um, or if it's not. And I can still talk to the city manager, city clerk, or city attorney about any direct directions, or orders. Not really orders. That feels kind of weird. Any requests. It is not okay for me to reach out to a head of department or to a local city worker about something I want them to be done. You don't see me go like I'm the mayor. um, that is absolutely not appropriate. So like things like that, there's like a chain of command. So like the city manager will deploy down to there's the department heads. The department heads will deploy down to that kind of chain of command. Um, the things that the mayor can do that the city manager cannot. There's just a lot of things I sign, like all the resolutions, the votes, any ordinances, and new laws that get passed by our city. I sign them as mayor.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but just off the boat that you're talking about how people actually get into the role of mayor, one thing that I've heard from previous interviews as well is that cities like Mountain View and also my own town like Danville were very nonpartisan when it comes to mayoral elections and our city council. I was just wondering if you think that's an important part, and it's obviously something that differs from our state and federal elections. So do you think that's something that's beneficial, or is that something that you would change?
Mm, I mean, there's that joke. I usually do this joke. Potholes are nonpartisan. Um, and to some degree there are some issues, especially when you drill down to just like the local level, like all you are is a neighbor trying to help your other neighbors, and that is a very kind of simple thing. um, I, however, am not a very I am very partisan. I not only am I mayor, but I'm also a member of my Democratic Central Committee at the same time. There are rules about holding two separate offices, but the only exception to that is party offices. So I'm actually I'm a very big Democrat, giant D. Um, so and in Mountain View, the voter breakdown is about 50% of our community are registered Democrats, or 50% of our voters are registered Democrats. 20% are registered Republicans, and about 30% are either declined to state or some other party. Like there is a dramatic, um, over 2 to 1 more Democrats than Republicans, and then you just have like other. Um, so on our city council, every one of us are registered Democrats. But you'll find that it's a very big tent, because we do have disagreements and we do have different ideas and how things should be done. Yet we're all registered Democrats. Um, I'm probably out of all of them close to being the leftist leaning. So um, when there's talk about like it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican on your city council, I'm like, I have I may disagree with that.
Yeah, that's.
I
I
don't
think that
think
helps
we've
us
had.
understand. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually don't think we had a non-Democrat in probably over a decade. No, wait. Yeah, oh, close to a decade. We had a libertarian once, about a decade ago.
Well, it seems like it just reflects like the makeup of the city. So, now that we kind of have understood like how the mayor actually looks and what the roles and jurisdictions are, I wanted to move a little bit more into your own personal journey, which I think we've started to touch on. But I wanted to really ask, like, how did you become mayor? Like, was this something that you like always saw yourself as a kid, or was this something where like some pivot happened? Really, just how did you end up being here?
Oh my God, God no. When I was your age, social studies was among my worst subjects. Like, if you told my social studies high school teacher, like, I would be mayor of a city, she'd just look at me like I grew a head. Like, I did so terribly in social studies. Um, and, like, when I went to college, I ended up studying mechanical engineering. Um, and, like, I avoided anything that had to do with any kind of social studies or government. It's not like I disliked government too much, just on like principle, like the concept of understanding generally what you learn. You don't really learn about local government in high school government class. You learn about, the three branches, the executive, legislative, judicial, which quite honestly, all of that's really interesting right now. So if you look at the federal level, but then they don't really go into like the state level, and maybe some might go to the state level just because it's closer and more accessible for like someone in California. It's easier to go to Sacramento than to DC. Um, but yeah, I did so poorly in social studies. It was never this was never kind of a possibility for me as I was growing up, kind of thing. Also, I grew up, I'm Filipino. My parents left the Philippines after the assassination of a presidential candidate. And so, like, they were like, we do not want you in politics. We don't want you to be dead. That would be great if you stay alive. My older sister, however, was very, she liked arguing and she liked pushing boundaries. So she always wanted to be in politics. So that was also kind of interesting. She ended up studying law. Um, and she went off to DC and then eventually to Orange County and then got involved in politics there, did law school and stuff like that. Um, so it's really strange that like by the time she came back to the Bay Area, I was here and already in politics. So my journey was uh, interesting. I graduated college at a really bad time, around the time of the financial crisis of 2008. That was not a great time. That was not a great time to be a fresh new graduate, even with a degree in mechanical engineering, um, to go out into the world being hire me, because no one was hiring, and those who were had a lot of options to pick from. So I boomeranged back home, um, and I helped out with family. My little sister was still in high school at the time, and I took her to school because my dad um, he worked as a doctor at a state hospital, and it was at a time when they were closing all the state hospitals, um, and they closed his hospital down about 3 years shy of him being able to get his pension. And so, in order to be able to work that final 3 years, he ended up having to go to another state hospital in Southern California. So he had to move away from us for 3 years in order so that he can retire with dignity, essentially. Um, and so while he was away, my mom had to take care of the house, and so it was apt timing for me to boomerang back and help out with the house and with my little sister. When she finally went off to college, around that a little about a year or so later, I had like this awful empty nest syndrome because like I was still job hunting, trying to figure out like my place in the world. And for a while, my place was to take care of the house, to take care of my little sister. And now my little sister was gone. She went to Southern California and UCLA. Family was very proud of her for that. Um, and so she always sent back things that she wanted. Like she's like, "Can you send this? Can you send that?" When 2012 rolled around, she messaged me that she was interested in getting an Obama snapback hat Did I know what the difference of a snapback hat versus like a regular hat was? No. I figured I would just show up at the whatever Obama store that they had at an Obama headquarters office, and that they would tell me. So I walked into the Obama office in San Jose. I was volunteering at the Tech Museum of Innovation at that time. It's now called the Tech Interactive. Um, Rebranding, what are you going to do? So I walked into the Obama office, and you had someone there. They did not have a store at their headquarters, which was dumb. But they managed to talk me into volunteering almost every day at the Obama headquarters for his reelection. It was when he was up against Mitt Romney. And so I volunteered to do like data entry and then phone calls. Because the strategy for the Obama campaign was you would call into the swing states so the people in the swing states can go knock on doors. And so, because California was going to go for Obama,
Yeah.
it's like 80% Democrat. Maybe not 80%, but it's so much overwhelmingly Democrat. We're not a swing state under any stretch of the imagination. So that was my life for in 2012. I got involved with the Obama campaign. From the Obama campaign, I got involved with the Silicon Valley Young Democrats. I was always happy to be a behind the scenes person because, like I said, I didn't. A lot of it felt like, oh, this is just kind of a side project. This is a temporary thing, and so I volunteered for other people's campaigns as a young Democrat. California Young Democrats has had a motto for the longest time while I was there was "We are the margin of victory." That like this many votes equals this many door knocks or this many phone calls, and that means this many hours of volunteering. And this, if you donate this many hours, you could connect that with how many votes, and that amount of votes is that margin of victory. It is actually in a presidential election, it's so vast, but in a local election, that's when it gets like really narrowed down. In 2014, with my newly acquired friends in the Young Democrats, we had a friend decide he was going to run for Palo Alto City Council. My friend Corey Wolbach. He grew up in Palo Alto, and that was kind of like a big selling point. Palo Alto was having a huge fight about development. There was a big thing, I believe in 2013. They had a referendum on an affordable housing project for seniors. And those who wanted to block the project won. And that was something that I believe that city had to reflect over. There are some people who probably didn't want to reflect over it. But I think over time the conversation has shifted. So as I was involved with the Young Democrats, if you're a young person and a young professional and aren't able to live with your parents like I did at that time, the housing crisis was very acute for you. So a lot of my colleagues and counterparts, it was kind of their top priority. So I got involved mostly with the local housing politics, trying to get more housing approved. That was kind of the big thing. So we ran this campaign in 2014 for Corey, who was a pro-housing candidate in Palo Alto, after Palo Alto had voted down an affordable housing project. So we had our work cut out for us. It was like a little ragtag group of people. Like 4 of us were like the core main team, and that included the candidate. So we had like a treasurer, we had a campaign manager, and whatever I was doing. I was like, I will do whatever is left to do. And in the end, we didn't even know if he won on election night. He was behind on election night because the votes were still coming in. And as I don't know if you follow elections as closely as some of us do, it can get really slow, especially with the way mail-in ballots are set up. So it was on the Friday after election day that he jumped ahead. In the end, my friend Corey won by 135 votes. That is a margin of victory. So while we enjoyed that win for us, his campaign manager at the time, my friend Lucas, Lucas Ramirez, he lived in Mountain View. And he was active in Mountain View, but he was still running Corey's campaign. We were not paid. We were all volunteering on these things. And you'll see in a lot of these campaigns, especially from small towns, like, it's volunteers. There's no high-price consultants or anything like that. You don't see that stuff until you get to, like, the big cities, like San Jose, or cities that just somehow, even though they're not that big, they have a lot of money, like Santa Clara. But that's because they have things like the 49ers just dropping in millions. It's crazy. And so the campaign manager of Corey at the time, he was like, every single time we messed up on Corey's campaign, and like our dear campaign manager was like in a loop of like, oh no, we're gonna lose and it's gonna all be bad, and he'd go into like a little Eeyore mode. We were like, Lucas, in 2 years, when you run for Mountain View City Council, we will know to not do this. And so it was like a mantra going through. So 2 years later, in 2016, we managed to bully him to run for office too. And I ran his campaign. At the same time, I formally moved into Mountain View. I moved out of my parents' house. I moved into a BMR unit. BMR stands for below market rate. These are units that are set aside for low-income people. I did not know I was low-income then because I was living at home, and you know the biggest cost that you have is housing, usually. So I moved out of my parents' house into a BMR unit. I lucked out because it was a friend that she had a 2-bedroom apartment, and she needed a roommate that made a certain amount of income so that we qualified. It had to be over a certain amount but under a certain amount in order to like qualify. And I magically hit that Goldilocks zone for her. And so we moved to I moved into Mountain View. I ran Lucas's campaign. At the same time, there was a ballot measure that was a community-led ballot measure. It was called Measure V, also known as the Community Stabilization and Fair Rent Act. Colloquially, it's known as rent control. So basically, a landlord cannot raise the tenant's rent over a certain amount. It was highly controversial. Lucas was one of the few candidates that supported it, and so we did a lot of coordination with the Measure V campaign people. In the end, it was interesting because when we were knocking on doors, there was a sense that they're like, Lucas seems like a good candidate, nice young kid. We were young back then. But they're like, oh, but we don't think he's a serious candidate if he supports this law. And we're like, fair, but he does, so please vote for him. In the end, he lost, but Measure V won. So like, even though people were like, well, I don't know how serious this is, well, people felt that was a thing, and that probably changed my political career significantly. One of the things that happened when Measure V got passed is that it created a board called the Rental Housing Committee, and I was a tenant, and I was a supporter of the law, so I applied to be on the committee, and I got on. We needed people who believed in the law, essentially. It was still a controversial law, and there was a sense of people wanting balance with that law, but it was like balance like having someone who believes in oil working for the EPA kind of thing, and it's just like, is that really balance? I don't know. So I got on there to at least make sure that we had some tenant voices on there, and it was a very high profile committee. From there, that was my journey in 2016. Also, we also learned things changed in the federal government around that time too. But I focused mostly on the local level at that point. because it kind of felt like I couldn't do much on the federal level, even though, like I said, I started out in politics on the federal level, volunteering for the Obama campaign. But there's so much more you can do on the local level. So I volunteered. We ran Lucas again in 2018, and he won that time. And then in 2022, I ran his re-election campaign. Also in 2022, we had a council member who ran for a higher office called the Board of Equalization. You can't rely on me to tell you what the Board of Equalization does. I don't think anyone really knows what it does. Something to do with taxes. Anyway, so Sally Lieber got elected to the Board of Equalization. She vacated her seat, and then the council got to appoint a replacement, and that replacement was me. So that's how I got on council in 2023. I got sworn in on Valentine's Day, so I always make a joke that I don't need a boyfriend or a girlfriend. The city is my Valentine. And then in 2024, I ran for a full term for my seat and won. And then I became mayor right after I won proper election. And then I became vice mayor, and then I became mayor. And thus I'm here. That was a
That's
long-winded story.
no, that was amazing. I love to hear all that. It sounds like there's definitely like ups and downs when you went through it, but I just wanted to ask, like, out of your entire journey, like, I know a lot of mayors have this one like dignifying moment where like they can look back at it and say like this one moment is what reminded me of why I love public service. Like, have you ever had a moment where like is there one thing that comes to your mind of like, oh, this one thing like motivates me, or reminds me why I continue to do this?
This is why I love like it's the journey, but also like when the suffering becomes worth it. That sounds so morbid. um, but when I was on the rental housing committee, we were determining the rent control law passed, but there were things that were unclear, and that was the job of the rental housing committee to make it clear. One of the things that were unclear was whether mobile homes were included in that rent control law. Now, mobile homes are a very interesting level of vulnerability. They own the home, but they rent the land. And if they can't rent the land, or if they can't afford the rent on the land, they have to move their home. But that home is not actually mobile. So they essentially lose their home that they own. So they were in a particularly vulnerable place. It's different from an apartment, although like losing a home is losing a home. So in the rental housing committee, I lost a vote. It was a 3-2 vote. It was only one vote made that difference kind of thing. That the rent control law did not apply to the mobile home park residents. It was heartbreaking, and I fought so hard against that. To try to get them protected. I think I even, yeah, I cried on the dais on that one. It took so much fighting for the mobile home park residents, but they managed to get a council to adopt their own protections for mobile home parks. And then when I got onto council, we pushed it farther to give them stronger protections. There was a moment of, how do I say it? It's like a redemption on that. Like, I couldn't protect them then. 5 years later, I found a way to make that up to them.
Sort of like a full circle moment for you there, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I also wanted to touch you in your last response. You mentioned how you actually started at the federal level with the Obama campaign, then you moved on to the local level. But I was just wondering, like, since then, have you ever had any aspirations of going to either the state or the federal level? I know recently the mayor of San Jose wanted to move up to the state, and we see mayors making these type of moves pretty often. So,
I mean, I never wanted to be the actual person doing it. So, like, if I had an interested in state or federal or anything like that, I would be like, I would be a great staffer. um, Actually, that's a lie. I would not be a great staffer. They don't pay them enough. It's actually really sad. The state legislature and the federal staffers, they don't get paid because one, the cost of living in this area is so high compared to the state or the nation. And so, um, like, what the cost of a staffer is, like, you can't live on that. I don't know how you can do that. Granted, I could barely live on it in a nonprofit salary. Um, but I don't currently, I kind of want to just stay in Mountain View. Um, I'm so early on in my term, essentially, my terms. Um, this is my third year in office. Yeah, third year in office, my first properly elected, or second properly elected year in office. Um, and like, I could get 10 years in office in Mountain View, and I want all of it. So it's a long way off. There's a lot of
Oh,
things to get involved in the state level, though. We have weighed in on, and I personally have weighed in on state uh, legislation. That was the word. Because there's legislature and then legislation, um, but particularly on housing, that has been always kind of my big, uh, that is my big issue that I've been known for and been fighting for, primarily on the protection of tenants, making sure that people aren't displaced from their homes, making sure that Mountain View is a welcoming community, which means that we have the homes for people who do want to move in here. So if your parents want to move back to Mountain View, they should, and you should come too.
yeah. On that theme of housing, I also wanted to touch on something that you brought up earlier. Like, obviously, Mountain View is in the heart of Silicon Valley and home to a bunch of major companies like Google, Waymo, Intuit, and LinkedIn. And I was just wondering, like, with so many workers that need to supply and like work at these companies, has that like raised any more issues when it comes to housing and like finding a way to fit all these people in?
I mean, it's the core issue of housing. We have a jobs housing imbalance in Silicon Valley, and they're acutely, you can tell through individual cities. So in Mountain View, our population doubles in a day because you have people coming in. We have twice as many jobs as people in homes, essentially. And Carl Guardino, he was the former CEO of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. He always liked to say, housing is where jobs go to sleep. So if a city wants jobs, you need to get the housing for them. In Palo Alto, I believe it's like three times. So like there are three times as many jobs as there are homes. Now the numbers may have shifted a little, but it's still a dramatic, really dramatic uh, uh, deficit of housing. And so, and you know where a lot of it is. So you have like the places like Palo Alto, Menlo Park, because Menlo Park is where Facebook is. And like you have Mountain View, you have Sunnyvale, you have Cupertino where Apple is. And so you have this like cluster of where the jobs are, but not enough homes for all the people. So where are those people coming from? They're coming from San Jose, they're coming from the East Bay. And so you can see those commute patterns. This is why if you want to go on 237 from the East Bay to Mountain View in the morning, you ain't doing it. That's going to be an hour, maybe two. If you're coming from San Jose up the peninsula in the morning, it's not happening. That's you might as well put in a new audiobook. You'll finish the book before you get to work. And then on the way on at the end of the day, on the way back, like if I have a meeting in San Jose at night, I'm just like, nope, that's not gonna happen. Can we zoom in? And like this is also why public transit's really important because like public transit doesn't get held up by traffic. Well, buses do, but like Caltrain, straight down, 20 minutes, no matter how much traffic there is, unless a car is like on the track. But that's a different story. Um, so like you can like you know where all the jobs are. You know where the housing is insufficient, and Mountain View is one of those places. We're not the only ones of the places, but we're one of them.
I was wondering, in order to tackle that, like, does this look like a lot of like collaboration with the companies themselves? I know Mountain View, like, famously, I believe it was the North Shore Bay project with Google that was passed like a couple of years ago. Is that like your guys' main mechanism at trying to increase housing, like working with them directly, or are there other specific plans that you guys like to pursue?
Yeah, I mean the big thing with cities is to understand, especially with the housing crisis, cities don't build housing themselves. They have to rely on the people who actually own the land and developers to actually build said housing. Um, we worked with Google, particularly with the North Bay Shore Precise Plan. Now it's just a plan, and there have been some housing approved, but it's still a long way to go. Um, and so, I mean, there has been some housing that was built. Particularly, there was an Eden housing project that was for veterans. That was actually really nicely. We did a ribbon cutting, I believe, last year on it. Um, so that one was nice. But there's still a lot more housing planned, and it's still kind of in the that's kind of what cities do. They plan for it, and when they approve the plan, then like a city, then the whoever that owns the land can turn in their application. Can I build this city? And the city was like, does it match our plan? And then the developer's like, yes. And then the city goes, approved. But if it's not, then there's a lot of back and forth, and it could take time. And then there's on the developer side, they need to secure financing on it to make it happen. The same for affordable housing; it's a different set of financing. But yeah, those are kind of things that we look at. There is when you look at housing, the housing crisis and solving it. There's I like to go under the infrastructure, the framework of the three P's: produce, preserve, protect. So produce housing at all levels of affordability. So that's the one that a lot of people know. Preserve existing affordable housing. Um, so that's like older units, units that are deed restricted. When I say deed restricted, that means that like this is an affordable unit. Poor people are the only people that can rent this out, kind of thing. And then protect, and that's protect renters from eviction and displacement.
That's
So
awesome. I also wanted to ask, like, besides just housing, the tech economy being such a big part of the city, is there any other like places or areas where the local government intersects with these companies and other areas where you have to work with them, interact or collaborate?
I mean, housing is a significant one, but it's not the biggest one that we work with tech companies. The biggest one we work with tech companies is economic development. It is important for any city to have a thriving economy because that's how we pay for things. It's like, do we want a new bike bridge? We need to have a thriving economy so that we can charge the sales taxes or the property taxes necessary for it to get the money to be built. Things like that. And so we work with various companies, local companies, um, just on things, infrastructure, um, um, rules that may harm, like if there's a rule that currently harms their business, or if there's something that's harming their business that would be solved by a rule, that's where we would work together with a lot of these companies. Um, one of the big controversies that's coming around many cities right now is data centers. We have not really faced that yet. In Mountain View, I highly doubt that we will. The land here is just too expensive to use on a data center. There are some cities that are actively courting data centers as a hope for their economic development. I don't want to say that Mountain View doesn't need that, but we do have tech companies here that we are very grateful for that we don't feel the need to court that kind of use.
It's awesome. Specifically when you say that, like, the main thing that you work on them with is economic development. Like, what does that actually like entail and look like? Like, like
When they
specific
want
regulations or like,
it is development, so things like when they want to build new offices and stuff.
mm,
That is the biggest thing. That is literally their biggest thing. That is what they care about the most. And actually, when we worked on like housing with Google, it is because they wanted to build offices. But we were like, hey, we have twice as many jobs as housing, so we need to work on that. And they're like, so you want us to add housing too? And we're like, yes, yes, very much so.
when you hear a lot about these companies, like very like large term, you'll hear like big Google and like other tech companies, like you'll hear a lot about their lobbying. And immediately people always think of like Washington, D.C. and those like scandalous stories that you see in the news. But I was just wondering, is like lobbying and just more like classic like building relations with the government something that takes place on the local level too, specifically with all these major tech companies being home here?
I mean, I think most of us on the council has met the government affairs person for Google. He shows up to all the events. We have a very active chamber of commerce, and so that's where a lot of these tech companies work in. I remember used to like meeting with the person from LinkedIn, but I haven't seen them recently. Um, so they reach out. There's not much there's not much of a direct vote kind of thing. Like the North Bay Shore was like a large thing, and that was over a period of time, kind of thing. We worked with Google recently because, like many cities, like we work with very serious things like housing and climate change. But no, what did the big project we worked with Google recently? Pickleball, freaking pickleball. We had it's a fastest growing recreational sport or something like that, and people wanted more pickleball courts, and so there was a proposal to convert some of our tennis courts. But no, then we got the tennis court people really upset about that, and so like, okay, we're gonna find some space in the park and build you new pickleball courts. And then the open space advocates were like, no, we like that patch of grass. And so we're like, what do we do now? And then it took a while, but Google had a piece of property that was very limited in what they can build on because it was in the flight path. And so they're like, we could put pickleball courts here, and we're like, you could put pickleball courts there. Um, and we didn't have to worry about the sound because that's always like the big thing with pickleball. Apparently, it's really loud. Um, I kind of just tune things out because I live in an apartment and everything's loud. um, and so we now have a solution for our pickleball, and we worked on that with Google, kind of thing. So, but that's kind of the purpose of relationships. Of like, we have problems, you have problems. Let's solve our problems together.
As we kind of taper off into like the end of the podcast, I wanted to move on to specifically like more about youth and civic engagement. I
Mm.
think that's one of the very important parts of this podcast. And so I wanted to ask you just a little hypothetical. If you were like 15 years old today, like going right into high school, and you wanted to get involved in your community or local government, like what steps would you take?
I mean, like I said, I was very bad in social studies when I was in that age. One of the really good opportunities that most cities have is that they have a youth advisory committee. It is an actual committee under the city. I recommend that's a great way to get involved with your city. And because I am a Democratic Party girly, I also recommend volunteering with a campaign. Find a local campaign, read up on their what they stand for, and if it resonates with you, go volunteer. And that's usually knocking on doors for your neighbors. It's a little awkward and it's hard to get started, kind of thing, because you're just like hyping yourself up. You're like, I'm gonna knock on this complete stranger's door and tell them to vote for this person. What if they hate me? What if they think that I'm so terrible that they're never gonna vote for my candidate? Don't overthink it. But volunteering for a candidate, especially one that I always believe that you should, if you volunteer for a candidate, it should be one you believe in. If you work for a candidate, it should be one you believe in. Like, no money is worth that, quite honestly, to work for a candidate that you don't believe in. But volunteering, and not only that, like you learn so much about your community, how things are done, and the stupidest reasons why people vote. It's kind of crazy. Like, you think they're like, I will convince them that this housing policy is like the best thing ever, and they're like, that person went to the same school as my child. I'm voting for them. And you're just like, okay. Or, I talked to your candidate once before and he knew about the Federalist Papers. That sounded great. I'm voting for him. And you're like, okay. But you get to really learn about your community and you get to walk around your community. So, like, the ability to, like, knock on doors and really just talk to people is such a good opportunity, and it's like a free opportunity. You don't have to pay for it. I mean, they're probably really happy to have the free labor as a candidate, kind of thing. So it's I think that's kind of the best way to go.
One other thing that I noticed about you specifically, and I kind of admired and thought was super cool, is you're one of the only mayors who I know who actually like actively post on Reddit, whether that's just like city council updates that, it's something you don't see a lot of other mayors doing. And I was wondering, is that like, did that start as an attempt to reach like a younger audience, or how did that really come to be?
I mean, I'm not that old. I'm much older than you, but I'm probably much younger than the last mayor you interviewed.
Yeah.
Um, so I am active on Reddit on my own, and it was kind of one of those things where it was, it's very common. I have a colleague, Lucas, who I helped get elected when he ran in 2016, failed, then ran in 2018 and won. He had a newsletter that he sent out constantly. And I don't know, I just didn't like the concept of newsletters, and I was just like, well, I'll reach people where people are instead of people signing up for like getting updates from me. Like people are already on Reddit, people are already on Instagram, people are already on Twitter because I refuse to call it X. People are already on Threads, people are already on Blue Sky, and I'm already on those things, so I might as well just post on there when I get the time. I haven't posted in Reddit in a while, so hopefully when we're back from break, I'll get back on that treadmill.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I just thought it was super cool. That's a really easy way to reach kids that a lot of other mayors aren't really putting the effort to do. So,
I
with
mean, some
that,
other mayors are usually not. They don't even know how to get on Reddit.
that's
So,
also true. With that, I wanted to go into just the very last question, something I like to end every single podcast episode with. And that's, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a young person who wants to make a positive impact on their community, whether or not they ever decide to run for an office like this?
I mean, it's clear you don't have to run for office to make a significant difference. I only got into office, this is only my third year in office, but I've had over a decade of making a difference. And so you can volunteer with campaigns, get good people elected. Sometimes that the only person left that's good is you, and you have to like grapple with that. But if you can also volunteer, there's a lot of community groups out with different cities. Like for example, your library, you have your friends of whatever local library. You have your community emergency response, and that's a great thing. You have your local Rotary or Kiwani service clubs. Um, those are great places to really get involved in your community, kind of thing.
Great. Thank you so much for making time for this. And it was really great hearing all of your insight and stories. That's it for the second episode of the Mayoral. Thank you.